Hi, everybody. Welcome tonight. I hope you're able to find us here on Project Sleep's Facebook page, Facebook Live. I'm Julie Flagar. I'm the president and CEO of Project Sleep, and really excited to introduce you guys today to Amanda Myers. Hi, Amanda.
Hi,
And where are you, Amanda?
I am in Gainesville, Florida at the University of Florida.
Oh, cool. And I'm in Los Angeles. I can't remember if I said that already, but so we're across the country into the warmer places right now, probably. I know a lot of people are getting snow, but not for us. Sorry, guys. So please, as you are joining us tonight, please comment and share where you're watching from. It's always really, really fun to see all the different places people are tuning in from. And Amanda won't be able to see your comments during the broadcast, but afterwards is always really fun to go back. So as she shares things tonight, as she's sharing her story, please comment on things that are resonating with you. And please remember also that the video will stay public, so we can keep sharing it. So please give us lots of shares and hearts and likes and all this stuff. But remember that if you make comments, the comments will stay with the video and those will stay public. So you don't want to say anything in the comments that you don't want to share publicly. So just remember that. And also, let's see, what else? Oh, yes, we do these for educational and awareness purposes. So if anything about Amanda's story brings up questions for you about your own medical experience, please bring those questions to your sleep specialist or your neurologist or your narcolepsy specialist. And before Amanda starts her story, I just wanted to share a few updates from Project Sleep. So we have the scholarship open right now for students that are starting their first year of college, living with, if they're starting their first year in college in the fall of 2021, then students with narcolepsy or idiopathic hypersomnia can apply for that scholarship. And so that application is due April 1st. So there's still a few more months to work on your application. And so please check that out or share that announcement with your local schools or your local sleep doctors or libraries. Anywhere you can share that announcement helps us to raise awareness about narcolepsy. Also, we are doing a new topic-based series. If you guys haven't heard about it, it's called Narcolepsy Nerd Alert. And so those are on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time, once a month. And we just had our first one last Wednesday about narcolepsy roadmap. And next month, we will be taking on the topic of how to become a narcolepsy advocate. So we're really excited about those. Those are more topic-based. And then Amanda is a graduated Rising Voices of Narcolepsy speaker, and our next training program will happen this summer. So if you are interested in doing what Amanda's doing here, then the application is going to open mid-February. And that application will be open until April 15th, I believe. And then the training happens in June and July this summer. So I think that's it for Project Sleep for right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Amanda. We're so excited to have her present tonight. Amanda, are you ready to pull up your slides?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm going to share myself here.
Okay. So Amanda Myers is a college student who splits her time between studying biology and competing in Olympic weightlifting. At the age of 20, she was diagnosed with narcolepsy and now serves as a speaker for the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program. In her presentation, she details the symptoms most people don't attribute to the condition and offers some perspective on destigmatizing invisible illness. So please give a warm welcome to Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it. I don't know if people realize how much Julie is actually doing behind the scenes, but she is incredible and honestly a role model for any person, but especially people with narcolepsy. So really, really appreciate it just to be able to work with her. Just like she said, just want to reiterate that my name is Amanda Myers, and I'm going to be sharing my story with you. This is a picture of me on the left doing probably one of the more surprising things that people find out that I do, which is Olympic weightlifting, and I'll touch on that throughout my presentation. Right. All right. So, growing up, I was born in Central Florida. My sister and I moved around a lot with my mother when we were kids. And I remember always being really excited to move because I've always been the most talkative person in the room. So, unlike most kids, moving to new places, experiencing new things, and making new friends was absolutely not a problem for me. I have always been the type of person to wear as many hats as possible. I guess you could say I wore all of the hats. And I've kind of always been this way. So, as you can see on the picture, all the way on the left on the screen here, that's a picture with my stepdad, Scott, at one of my many honor roll ceremonies, collecting one of my many A+ honor roll certificates that they probably have in some bin somewhere because there honestly were just so many. And I was proud of every one of them. In high school, I was in the International Baccalaureate program, and so I received my IB diploma upon graduation of high school. I was also the captain of 2 varsity sports while I was in high school. I did softball, which I competed in for about 14 years, as well as high school weightlifting, which is a little bit different than the weightlifting that I do now. This picture in the middle is with my parents, and that was on my senior night for varsity softball, and that was one of the last times that I played softball. So that was a really special culmination of my softball career since I'd played for so long. I was also in the Lecanto School of Art in high school, so shout out to LSA. I completed that alongside with my International Baccalaureate and my high school education, and I graduated from that school upon graduation of high school. I also have always loved presenting and public speaking. So when all of the required public speaking, things ran out, I made sure that I went and I sought out even more to do just for fun. So when I was a senior in high school, I got first place at the local and district level and then made it to the regional competition for the American Legion Oratorical Contest. And I could probably still recite my speech to this day because I loved it that much. I also had the huge honor of giving my high school senior address, which is that picture all the way to the right, which was obviously very exciting for me since I loved public speaking, and it also was a really huge honor. Throughout high school, I was the freshman, sophomore, and senior body president because I just always had to be really, really involved. And I was the lucky recipient of 10 scholarships going into my first year of college at the University of Alabama. I, not surprisingly, continued this pace and filled my plate with nearly every single opportunity when I reached the University of Alabama. And this is where I started to really explore the world of Olympic weightlifting, which is a bit different than high school weightlifting. At around the age of 20, I had left the University of Alabama because my grandmother, who as beautiful as she is pictured there on the left. That's a picture from my high school graduation. One of the last times that, she was really able to get out and about, and I was really happy that she was able to be there for me. Her condition had sort of worsened, and so I moved home to be with her and to help my parents, and she was requiring full-time care at that point. And I was working as a bartender at a country club at the time. And I was working full time, I wasn't in school, and I started to notice that whenever I would drive after my shifts, I would just get really, really tired. I didn't really think much of it because I assumed that it was probably from overworking or honestly the fact that I had never really worked a full-time job in my life. So, that made sense to me. But before I turned 21, I remember I was working a New Year's Eve party for the members at the country club. And obviously, a New Year's Eve party went pretty late. And so at about 2 a.m. or so, we started to clean things up. And about 2:45 a.m. is when I had made my fresh cup of coffee and I was getting ready to make my drive home. The fastest route to my house was about 45 minutes down this really long, windy road called Route 40. And deer were usually pretty common at night. So I made sure that whenever I was on this road, especially at night, that I had my bright headlights on and my music down really low so that I could really pay attention. I don't remember being particularly tired that night, but then the next thing I remembered was waking up in my driveway. I remember picking my head up from the steering wheel and looking around and being pretty confused. And so I opened my car door and I looked down and there was grass. And I realized that I had essentially rolled into my front lawn as opposed to intentionally turning into my driveway. I looked at the time of my watch and it said 4 a.m. So I realized that I had apparently slept for 30 minutes after my 45-minute drive. I was pretty confused, and so I tried to sort of conjure up what had happened, jog my memory. I got in my car at work, turned onto Route 40. No, okay, so I got in my car at work, and then I turned onto Route 40, but that was all I could get. I had small flashing memories of certain stretches of the road, but I couldn't decipher if that was from that specific night that I drove it or the other 100 times that I had made that drive when I was coming home from work. Looking back, I guess it was a bit extreme, but at the time, I sort of thought, it's 4 a.m. Obviously, I'm going to be tired. I just was on my feet all night. It has to be just that. I was just tired. From that point on, I found myself routinely having difficulty maintaining alertness whenever I drove specifically. And then that started to translate into the classes that I registered for at my local state college as well. I found that I really could not manage to get from point A to point B without having to stop at least twice, pull over, go to a gas station, do jumping jacks on the side of the road, just to sort of get a little bit of energy, drive, and then make it 10 minutes and have to do the same thing over again. I was taking prereqs at the local state college in order to fill the requirements to transfer to the University of Florida, which is where I am now. And it was something I was really excited to go back and do. But I found that I was falling asleep in the middle of lectures and having difficulty even going through notes at night, which was really frustrating since I've always been such an enthusiastic and a hardworking student. A few months into these constant sleep attacks, something really strange started to happen. I remember I was working a morning shift and I got off work and was heading home around 3 p.m., so right in the middle of the day. I was on my third cup of coffee, but it really wasn't doing much for me, as it usually didn't these days. And I remember slapping my cheeks and I blasted the AC because this was my usual routine to keep myself awake whenever I really started to get tired while I drove. So I was doing this and I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden I slammed my brakes and I swerved off the road. My heart was pounding and I had this sudden surge of adrenaline, and I honestly just could not believe what I was seeing. There were actually hippies in a drum circle in the middle of the roadway, completely unfazed by cars just whizzing by them at 60 miles an hour. I mean, really. And cars were honking at me when these hippies were just in the middle of the road. I mean, seriously, what was happening? So I took a minute and I collected myself and I looked over my shoulder, and the hippies were gone. And I remember being really confused and a bit thrown. So I just sort of waited a second, and then I, felt this new sense of adrenaline and energy from what had just happened. And I felt okay to finish my drive home. But I was a bit frustrated. And so I started to say out loud, what is wrong with you? Why can you not make it a single drive without falling asleep or these weird things happening? I mean, seriously, what's wrong? And I said this out loud, and someone spoke back. I looked over on my dashboard and there were these three little bears. And after I spoke, they said to me, everyone in a row, "It's okay. You're almost there. You can make it." And they said that, and I spoke back, and we conversated for the rest of my drive. And I made it home, parked in my driveway, and I laid my head on my steering wheel for just a minute, closed my eyes, and I opened them, and they were gone, just like the hippies. Looking back, I guess, again, these were pretty strange things that were happening, but they really continued to happen from that point on. I found that when I would get really sleepy, I would start to see things in my vision, and they would be so real that I would actually interact with them. And I would only know that they weren't real because people would come up and tap me on the shoulder and they'd say, "Hey, Amanda, are you okay? Because your eyes are barely open and you're kind of talking to yourself." And then I would sort of snap out of it. This was happening pretty routinely, at least a few times a week from that point on. So after this, I decided that I would pursue my first doctor because these things that were happening just seemed to keep happening. I went to the first doctor and he was bewildered by my symptoms and said that we should run blood work. And then when the blood work came back without any indication of a thyroid problem or an iron deficiency, he said to me in my appointment that my symptoms obviously were not connected. They did not make any sense, and he simply just could not help me. And as I was getting up to leave that appointment, the last thing he said to me, and I quote, was, "I don't know, maybe it's narcolepsy, but let's just wait and see." I remember calling my mom after that appointment, and I really didn't fully know what narcolepsy was, but I had some idea, and I knew at least that it was serious. And I said to her, "What exactly are we waiting for? Do I need to crash my car into a tree or actually cause bodily harm before we actually do something about it? At what point is it enough for someone to actually look into it?" So obviously, leaving that appointment, I felt extremely insignificant and honestly really small. I decided then to go to a second doctor, and this doctor simply suggested that I need to see a psychiatrist. And at this point, I was starting to doubt the severity of my own symptoms. I told myself maybe I was making it up. Was I over exaggerating? Was I really that tired? Or was this just normal for people, in their 20s who were working a lot? I, I felt like maybe I was just over exaggerating it. And I likely would have continued to discount my symptoms if it weren't for an Instagram post from actually someone that I went to the University of Alabama with and who I was really good friends with, which I realize is very millennial of me. And she posted about her recent diagnosis of narcolepsy with cataplexy. And I remember reading her account of her symptoms and the things she had been through. And, some of them resonated with me and almost spoke to me in a way that inspired me to go to a third doctor because I thought maybe this might be related to what's happening to me. About 10 minutes into me detailing my symptoms to a third doctor, he stopped me right in the middle of my sentence and he closed his laptop and he said to me, exuding confidence, "I will have to run some confirmatory tests, but I believe that you have narcolepsy." And the words "I believe" that came out of his mouth sang. I really, it's hard for me to articulate the feeling that this person in this position of authority, this person that has this medical background who really knew what they were talking about, heard me, he validated me, he understood me, and he might have an answer to the things that were happening. He made sure that he reminded my stepdad, who accompanied me to my appointment, that driving was pretty much a no-go until We sort of got a definite answer to what was happening, and he made sure that he explicitly told him the dangers. So my stepdad made sure that I did not drive until I had my sleep study done. Unfortunately, it took about 3 months to get that sleep study from the time that I had that appointment. And those 3 months were arguably the hardest out of my entire symptom period. They were hard because, I felt hope that the semblance of hope that I might have an answer to my questions, but 3 months made it feel really, really far away. And on top of that, this was the height of my symptoms, where I was having to take naps in between shifts at work. I was having difficulty making it through single lectures. I had to get up in the middle of my lectures and walk around. I was still training because it was just something that I couldn't get myself to stop doing since I loved it so much. But I was so fatigued all the time that I honestly just didn't have an appetite, which translated to, lack of food, lack of energy. I just was always nauseous, which made working out difficult. And on top of that, I started to have this weird sensation whenever I would wake up where I could see things, but it felt like I almost couldn't breathe and that I was trapped inside my body. The fatigue is something that I have a hard time articulating to people because the aching and the heaviness in my muscles is something that I think is really characteristic to this. And so I think the best way that I found to explain it is by this analogy. So just stick with me on this. So imagine with me for a second that there is a boa constrictor. It's wrapped itself around your head and then your neck. So you start to get a little bit dizzy. And it then manages to wrap itself around every one of your arms and your legs and make sure that it simultaneously tightens around every single one of your joints. You then try to stand up. But with every single step that you try to take, you have this 30-pound boa constrictor trying to pull you down. On top of that, the pressure starts to make it feel like you might actually be sick. This boa constrictor is now your permanent accessory, or at least it was for me. I carried around that boa constrictor from the moment I woke up, through my entire workouts, through my entire workday, and until the second I went to bed. I often had to keep a bucket, which my gym was very kind for letting me do this, a bucket next to my barbell while I worked out because some days were worse than others. And I honestly felt like I might actually be sick if I bent over the bar to lift my weight just one more time. Workouts that would routinely take me, an hour and a half were starting to look a lot more like this. And were starting to take me 3 hours because in between every single rep, I would have to muster up the courage, talk myself up, and motivate myself to just pick up the bar one more time. After what felt like an eternity, I finally had my sleep study done. When my doctor was discussing my diagnosis of narcolepsy without the presence of cataplexy in the appointment a few weeks later, I was nearly unfazed. At this point, I felt like this was the only plausible explanation for what was happening to me. And so him saying it was almost reassurance. It was almost comforting more than anything, which I think really threw him off. So much so that he had to reiterate that it was incurable and lifelong. I realized I probably should have felt scared or possibly confused leaving that appointment, but I actually felt at ease for the first time in almost 2 years. I thought that prescription that was being handed to me after that diagnosis would wipe away the last 2 years of struggles and allow me to return to wearing all of my hats, and I could return to my fast-paced life. But I was quickly faced with a reality check when the doctor explained to me that narcolepsy is a chronic neurological disorder that impairs the brain's ability to regulate the sleep wake cycle. It affects 1 in 2,000 people, or 200,000 Americans, and 3 million people worldwide. Symptoms vary by person, and they may include excessive daytime sleepiness, which is periods of extreme sleepiness during the day that feel comparable to how someone without narcolepsy would feel after staying awake for 48 to 72 hours. If you'll remember, I told you that I couldn't drive longer than 10 minutes without needing to pull over and do something to wake myself up. That was one of my many examples of excessive daytime sleepiness. Cataplexy is the next symptom, which is striking, sudden episodes of muscle weakness, usually triggered by strong emotions such as laughter, exhilaration, surprise, or anger. The severity may vary from a slackening of the jaw or buckling of the knees to falling down. The duration may be for a few seconds to several minutes, and the person remains fully conscious, even if unable to speak during the episode. I have narcolepsy type 2, meaning I do not experience cataplexy. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations are visual, auditory, or tactile hallucinations upon falling asleep or waking up. These can be frightening and confusing. If you'll remember my hippies in a drum circle and my little 3 bears that accompanied me on my drive, those were all examples of hypnagogic hallucinations. Sleep paralysis is the inability to move for a few seconds or minutes upon falling asleep or waking up. It is often accompanied by hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations. And it's important to know that people without narcolepsy can experience these hallucinations and sleep paralysis. In fact, about 1/3 of all people experience these at some point in their lives, usually during periods of high stress or poor sleep. For people with narcolepsy, these are much more frequent and consistent over time. The times that I told you about when I would wake up and felt like I couldn't breathe and that I was trapped inside my body were examples of my sleep paralysis. Disrupted nighttime sleep. Unlike public perceptions, people with narcolepsy do not sleep all the time. Timing of sleepiness is off with narcolepsy, so one may fight sleepiness during the day, but actually struggle to sleep at night. There are 2 forms of narcolepsy: narcolepsy with cataplexy and narcolepsy without cataplexy. Recent research suggests that narcolepsy with cataplexy is caused by a lack of hypocretin, which is a key neurotransmitter that helps sustain alertness and regulate the sleep-wake cycle. Less is known about narcolepsy without cataplexy. My diagnosis is narcolepsy type or narcolepsy without the presence of cataplexy. Diagnosis typically includes a 24-hour sleep study that will include a nighttime portion or polysomnography and a daytime nap portion or multiple sleep latency test, which record one's brain waves. The diagnosis is mainly based on how quickly, frequently one goes into rapid eye movement, REM, or dream sleep stage during these tests. These lovely pictures here on the screen are when I had my sleep study done. And as you can see, it was obviously incredibly comfortable to sleep with all of those many wires connected to me. There's currently no cure for narcolepsy. Treatment for symptom management varies widely by person, but may include wake-promoting, histidine-directed, or stimulant medications to increase alertness in the daytime, nighttime medications to increase wakefulness and reduce cataplexy, antidepressant medication to decrease occurrence of cataplexy, or scheduled daytime naps. Coping strategies vary widely by person, but may include social support, such as meetup groups or social media, an improvement in general health and wellness through sleep hygiene, diet, and fitness. To my dismay, the journey to finding a good medication has not entirely been a pleasant one. I've lost nearly 20 pounds in the time between symptom onset, and this even continued for up to a year after I was diagnosed. In the beginning, it was due to fatigue and this lack of an appetite that eventually caused nausea. And then after I was diagnosed, it was as a result of a side effect of the medication, which also caused nausea. At least one nap a day gives me optimal performance, though scheduling this in between trying to wear all of my hats has still been a personal struggle for me and something I am still working on to this day. This picture on the left is a typical schedule for me. As you can see, I sometimes have to write in when I'm going to take a nap in between my gym and my classes just to keep myself accountable so I know that I will do it. I have gotten better at listening to my body because I realized that if I don't take a nap, the nap will take me. I've also gotten the habit of writing little reminders for myself, usually in my planner, and they'll say something along the lines of rest is not a reward for overworking, because I still wrestle with the guilt of feeling like I'm being lazy or unproductive with the time that I could be doing something because I need to take a nap. As a person who thrives on overscheduling and working in high stress environments, I have learned that I can still be highly productive as long as I am strategic with my time. I now know that it's imperative for my classes to fall in a certain range of start and end times, and I've been able to locate the resources on my campus that allow me to do that. I have gotten back into competitive training, and I work out in the evening, which gives me a bit of a burst of energy to come home and work on my classwork because I've really never been a morning person. Narcolepsy has taught me some lessons that I was not entirely expecting to learn. I've become more empathetic to others because I realize I may not know their burdens. I realized that I know what it's like to wear a smile, but feel disconnected and agitated inside. I've also learned patience and composure through my conversations with people who believe that narcolepsy really looks like Hollywood portrays it and have no idea that there is more to it than just feeling extra tired. Something that's also helped me a lot is my dog, Reginald Sabin the First, who is honestly the light of my life. He has been sort of a key part on post-diagnosis. He's obviously the beautiful puppy in the pictures at the top. And if I need to take a nap, he's always happy to accompany me. But he also makes sure that if I try to sleep in a little too late in the morning, that he keeps me in check, and I absolutely do not do that. I have always been a really outgoing and transparent person. So most of the time, I really am happy to share my experiences with people in hopes to inform and destigmatize. And my family has been incredibly supportive. But a lot of people, even though most are open-minded, will still sometimes make insensitive comments, which is something that I constantly work through just so I don't really internalize them and hold on to them. The pictures on the right side of the screen are sort of huge markers for me. So this picture on the left was right after I moved back to Florida, but before I started to have symptoms. And I had always worked my whole life really, really hard to gain weight because I've always been tiny. And as someone who competes in a weight-specific sport and a sport that relies on strength, I really wanted to gain muscle and also look and feel physically my best. I had done that. I worked really hard to do that. And this picture on the left for me was where I looked and I felt the best. This is a left to right transformation. So this picture on the right is about 6 months after I was diagnosed and 6 months into taking medication. And there's about 20 pounds of weight loss between the left and the right. I remember this day at the gym, someone had brought in their kangaroo, and it was obviously adorable. And so I had someone take a picture, and I just really wanted to share it because I really wanted people to see that I had met this adorable baby kangaroo. I mean, who gets to do that? So when I left the gym and I got home, I pulled up the picture and I was looking at it. And the only thing that I could see in that picture was my hip bones. And they seemed to be protruding at me through my phone screen, almost flashing in my face. And I just could not get myself to share this picture with anyone. I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't bring it up. Even though I really wanted everyone to see how cute this kangaroo is, it honestly was just something that I felt like I looked really, really unhealthy. This has been one of the more difficult parts post diagnosis. Obviously, because I work so hard and I work in a weight specific sport where we sort of tend to fixate on our weight and trying to be as healthy as possible, but also being as strong as possible. But I've been really blessed with a coach and teammates who sort of understand that side of it since we're all in the same sport. And they all really kind of keep me accountable. And in the beginning, honestly, we decided that in those rare moments where I actually had an appetite in between all of my bouts of being nauseous, I was just going to eat. I was going to eat however much I wanted, and I was going to eat whatever I wanted. And I wasn't going to focus on, how many calories or what the ingredients were. And that's originally how I put on some of the weight. And now obviously I've been able to tune it in and continue to live a healthy lifestyle. And I feel like I'm finally on my track to looking and feeling physically my best. In a way, narcolepsy came at a pivotal time in my life. In conjunction with the passing of my grandmother after surviving a rare neurological disease herself, I was at a point where I had really lost motivation to continue pursuing what I thought I had wanted to do since middle school. I always grew up thinking that the only way I could truly make a difference and be an advocate was by being a civil rights attorney. After being out of school and going through so much and being with my grandmother, I realized that I didn't want to be a lawyer. What I really wanted to do was be an advocate, was to be a voice. And I didn't need to be a lawyer to do that. A vision of veterinary science seemed to fall into my lap with what felt like a push from my grandmother. I realized that animals are the representative group of those that do not have a voice. And animals can also suffer from a lot of the same neurological conditions that humans can suffer from, including narcolepsy. So by going into veterinary medicine, I can accomplish the same core goal that I really have always felt compelled to pursue, but in a career field that I honestly feel I am more suited for. I have been moved by my own experiences and my experiences with my grandmother to also invest in the scientific community in general. So I recently have served as an undergraduate research assistant in the SCAN lab at the University of Florida, which is a cognitive and behavioral neuroscience lab. And I was lucky enough to work with my very intelligent PI on a project where I was collecting data which investigated how wayfinding ability was affected in different age groups and how it was related to certain neurodegenerative diseases, which a lot of it overlapped with the same neurodegenerative diseases that my grandmother had. In spite of narcolepsy, I am pursuing my goals unapologetically and with a renewed sense of purpose. I fully intend on being a veterinary neurologist, and I know that I'm going to get there by being honest and transparent, even though I really do not have to be. Despite my unique brain, I will still help the voiceless and perform at the same, if not higher level than my colleagues. And to bring it full circle to the one thing that I told you I really, really love, on a personal matter, I also intend to hopefully win a national title here in a few weeks for weightlifting. I won my first state medal in this picture in the middle, which was very exciting. And I know that I'm going to continue training with my team alongside some really great athletes and a great coach. And I hope that one day I might be able to represent Team USA on an international team at an international competition. I also included the picture on the right because honestly, I feel like this is probably going to be me at the beginning of my vet school journey, but I don't think I'm alone in that. So because of low awareness, even among physicians, and misperceptions, there is an average of 8 to 15 years between narcolepsy symptom onset and diagnosis. It's estimated that the majority of people with narcolepsy are currently undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. Common misdiagnoses include epilepsy, depression, and schizophrenia. I personally went about a year and a half, almost 2 years between symptom onset and the time that I was diagnosed, which obviously felt like an eternity to me, but pales in comparison to the amount of time that some people have to wait. This picture here is a screenshot from a newspaper article that I was very lucky to have been featured in on World Narcolepsy Day. So this was in the Gainesville Sun, a local newspaper here. And this was a really cool thing for me because it gained a lot more traction than I was thinking. And from this article, I actually connected with a few people in my community here that had narcolepsy, had family members that had narcolepsy, and it sort of opened up this channel. And I actually got able to talk to a few people within my career field as well. A lack of awareness and understanding of what narcolepsy actually is has unfortunately created an environment where people are no longer empowered to strive towards the same goals or lead normal lives. I hope by being transparent throughout my life and my career, that people will begin to realize that for me, narcolepsy is not something that I am burdened with, but rather it's a uniqueness that requires my strength and my resilience to overcome and live with. I am sharing my story today as a part of the Rising Voices of Narcolepsy, a program of the nonprofit organization Project Sleep, which empowers patient advocates to share their stories and improve public understanding of narcolepsy. Thank you so much for listening to my story because I know that I can talk a lot.
Yay, Amanda. Great job. All right, I'm a little bit in tears, I must admit. Yeah, that was just really, really powerful. You have so many comments and questions, and everyone's just pretty much in awe of you and your weightlifting. So please continue to send in your questions. We have a few already. First, I'll just also let you know, not to be intimidated, but there are people watching from West Virginia, New York, Tennessee, California, Florida, including your mom is tuning in. And let's see, Michigan, Alabama, Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana, and probably some more too, but those are just the ones that shared where they're watching from. So thank you guys all for tuning in. So we have a question from Matt about whether you had any, I think, PRs. It says like personal record, sort of. Is that what that's saying? Any PRs you want to share for the weightlifters out there?
Yes, you know, what's really funny is this past 2 weeks, I hope my coach is listening right now because he's gonna laugh. The past 2 weeks have just been the craziest time for me because in weightlifting, you sort of reach, stagnant points where your body is in like a weird stage. Your lifting is weird. You might have an injury, and I felt like I was in that ever since I was diagnosed. In the past 2 weeks, I've had 4 PRs, and every time he's like, I don't know, we keep doing it. So the other day, at my body weight as a 49 kilogram lifter, I hit for the first time. I did a clean at 68 kilograms. which my dog is barking in the background. He's very excited about, obviously, which is, I think, about 150 or so pounds. I'm not great with the pounds conversion because we do kilograms, but that was really cool. And then I PR'd my snatch at about 46 kilograms as well, which I don't know the pounds conversion. But yeah, that was exciting. I
All
think
right,
those
that's
were like all last week too.
I also just love what you said about, like, how your body kind of goes through rhythms, because I feel like life is like that in general, just like living with narcolepsy sometimes are, just feel better than other times, I guess, symptom wise. So,
And I'm lucky that my coach works in sleep medicine. So, which is just the most ironic thing ever. I didn't know that coming to the gym. He didn't know that I had narcolepsy. And it was like a match made in heaven, I swear. And so he sort of understands on a second, like despite, like past the athlete level, he understands the narcolepsy level. And so whenever I walk into the gym, it's always like, all right, what is today? How are we feeling today? And it's not just like in general how you're feeling. It's like medication wise, nausea wise, did you eat enough today? Was your body liking you today? Which is just a really cool thing. So.
oh my God, that's so cool. I just think that appreciation for how it is day to day, and willingness to work with you. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
We also have shout out to your sister, Alyssa, watching from Colorado, I believe.
Ooh, hey,
So we have another question about whether, have you received any accommodations at school?
Yes. So I personally am always really open about my accommodations. Just like I said, I like to contribute and then hopefully destigmatize. And so if this can help anyone, my disability resource center on campus was extremely helpful. I have a learning specialist, and we went over everything. We talked about it. She didn't know what narcolepsy was, so it actually was cool to like sort of let her in on it. And then she actually made suggestions. She said, would this be helpful for you? And so for my courses, I do get 1.5 time accommodation on any like tests or timed assignments, because I do tend to have, like a lot of people with narcolepsy, you have like this brain fog where you almost sort of just, you're not there for a second, at least for me. And so that helps a lot. And I also, one of the big ones is scheduling accommodations. So I cannot have classes or exams before 9 a.m. or after 7:30 p.m. because I know that for me, those times are just, my brain is just not going to work. And I've luckily had a lot of professors that are like, all right, let's, it might be on a different day, or we just might have to work it out. But they usually find a time that works with my schedule in that time range that I can do that. So I also get priority registration, which is very helpful because a lot of times, when you register a few days late, the only classes left are the ones that are at 8 a.m, which I cannot take. So that's also been helpful.
Yes. I use a lot of those similar accommodations in law school. And I think that my original perspective was to shy away from that. And then once I embrace it all, and they all were helpful.
Yes.
I love your openness. I love how you said it towards the end, that it's really important to you to be honest and transparent, even though you're not required to be, or you don't need to be, or something. Is that just kind of like, just because you're kind of an open, honest person in general, or is there something specific about narcolepsy? Like, how did you, reach that? That's just my own question. How did you reach that kind of perspective? And did you always
Yeah,
feel?
I guess I am a pretty open, honest person. Honestly, I'm kind of an open book. I tend to word ramble. Obviously, I talk a lot. And I guess with my diagnosis, obviously it's been difficult. I just have always been the type of person that will try to at least make light of a situation. If I can't really find an exact positive, I'll probably make a joke about it. So I've always just been that kind of person. I've had that personality. And I, as far as applying to vet school and doing those sorts of things and eventually getting jobs, I felt like it would be easier to be upfront and honest about it. And then hopefully by the time that I get to finding jobs, maybe we're at a place as a society where people, have a little more of understanding what it is. And the word narcolepsy doesn't scare them. Like, you have narcolepsy and you want to operate on my dog. That sounds terrifying. So I think that by being transparent and upfront, people will feel less uncomfortable asking you those questions. And if that's in an interview, I'm okay with that because, you know, I brought it up ahead of time. I think that in general, for me, that's going to be the best way for me to get to where I want to go because I really I'm not good at keeping secrets either. Not that it's a secret, but like I said, I just talk too much, so it would just come out eventually. So
I love that. Okay, we have a question here from Shahad, I believe. She asked, how do you focus and finish your studies with all of your symptoms?
that is a great question that I wish I had a full, complete answer to. Still working on that, but I have some, I guess, tips. Like I said, I've never been a morning person. So originally my doctor was like, all right, you have narcolepsy. You're going to wake up at 8 a.m. and go to bed at midnight. And I was like, okay, sure. I tried that. It did not work. That is not how my body works personally. I've never been that person. So like I said, I tend to work out closer to like evening time. Um, and though it kind of seems weird, working out sort of gives me energy. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but I always tend to be like really invigorated. I come back from the gym, like, all right, let's do everything. So it might be nighttime, but that's when I like cook my dinner and I'm like all, you know, full of energy. And I do tend to do better studying at night, not super late, because I do have a pretty strict bedtime. I also personally have found that, again, I don't know if this is related. I think it's just because I zone out when I get really tired. If I listen to piano music, that is the absolute ultimate way for me to study. I don't know if that works for other people, but if I am not listening to piano music, I tend to just get really tired and I drift off and I'll sort of lay my hand here and I won't be able to focus. And again, also because I talk too much, I cannot study with other people because, again, that's just a personal thing. Um, Other than that, I really am still trying to figure that one out. I've been doing okay. I'm about to graduate with my biology degree. I have a pretty good GPA, so I'm doing okay. But every once in a while, I do find myself like having to check myself, like, all right, what are we gonna do right now to wake yourself up? Is that your third cup of coffee today? Maybe.
Well, I think those are really good tips, but also the reality is none of us have it all figured out, right? So that is hopefully comfort to someone to know that it doesn't mean that you still can't accomplish things, but none of us probably have it all figured out. So we have, well, I actually have a question for you. How did you find Rising Voices and getting involved in Project Sleep and the narcolepsy community?
How did I find Rising Voices? That's a great question, Julie. I think, okay, so I've always been a person that's like really invested in like, you know, contributing and helping out. And so I think I was having this like existential crises, like how am I gonna contribute to society? And so that led me to finding ways that I could, I guess, have like a small platform where like I'm not just talking to people around me, that maybe I could reach other people. Um, and then I did a Google spiral down the hole, and then I found Project Sleep, and I think it was in the middle of the Sleep In campaign, which I thought was really cool. And then I thought you were really cool, and then I watched a bunch of your videos, and I was like, I want to do that. So yeah, and then I was excited because there was a speaking program, and like I said, I've always loved public speaking. So it wasn't really like a specific way. It just was happenstance. It was fate, is what it was.
All right, we'll give it to fate or Instagram. I don't know. That's kind of a
Probably Instagram.
I love that part of your story that that original doctor had mentioned the word narcolepsy, but said, "Oh, we'll just have to wait," and your whole point about that, wait, what are we waiting for? But then that it was through another person sharing their story on Instagram that you learned more and probably thought more about it. So that just gives me the chills. I've heard, and so I can't, like, I think you said that was someone at University of Alabama. I feel like I've heard a few stories now that are kind of similar like this of people in school kind of talking about it on social media or even in person, just kind of like mentioning it at like a, well, back in the good old days when we used to be in person, sitting at a, cafeteria or something, and then hearing someone else say something, I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds like me. And So those kind of connections should never be underrated. There's so many of them. So I love that part of your story. Um, oh, let me check one more time if there's any other questions. There's so much love for you. I just can't wait for you to see all of it on Facebook tonight. I don't think that we have any other specific questions. And so, except for one, which was Matt's. Once again, Matt would like to know, how can we cheer for you? How can we follow what you're doing? I mean, we want to like know how you're doing on the national medal championship. Like, we just really want to cheer you on. How can we do that?
Yes, I post a good amount on my Instagram. A lot of it is my dog. So if you're okay with seeing a ton of pictures of my extremely handsome dog, then you can go there. I actually I have to remember to register tonight. I remembered, coach. I'm competing in the university national competition, which is live streamed, which is pretty cool. So it is virtual this year. So it's my first time doing a virtual competition. It might be kind of weird because I'm lifting in my own gym, but that's going to be hopefully my shot at a national medal, my first national medal. And that competition is March 6th, I believe. It's that first weekend in March. And I believe I left on that like Friday morning. And I can also send you, I don't know how else to get it, but I can send the link information because it just live streams. I think they do it on YouTube. So that's probably the best place. I do post a lot of things on my Facebook as well. That's pretty much it. I'm not super active on social media, but I will just sort of post updates there. So.
Okay, so March 6th is the big competition. Sounds like one of them.
I think it's a 6th. Is that a Friday?
It sounds like it should be, yes.
That sounds like a Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the sleep in, if you mentioned the sleep in, I forgot to mention that earlier. The sleep in is going to be, I believe, the 12th through the 14th. So that sounds, I think, or maybe the 13th. Yeah, I think it's the 12th so that should be a Friday through a Sunday. So it's the second weekend, right before daylight savings time change, that Sunday. It'll be the 14th, I think. So then the Friday before that sounds like it should be around March 6th. So we'll be sure to share that information. So I'll make sure that Amanda sends it over and so that we can have people cheering for you on the 6th. Because yeah, you got a lot of new fans. If you didn't have already a fan club, the fan club is expanding today. So
you guys are gonna inflame my ego and make me think I'm cooler than I am.
I don't know. Matt's also really good at roasting people, so we could probably find some ways to get some jokes.
Bring me down a notch. I might need
it. Let's see. Madison wants to know your Instagram, and I will note that in the post about Amanda on our Instagram, we link to hers. It's in her description. Because it's like I forget what exactly it is, but
I think it's AC Myers _
AC Myers, yeah, _ So you can also check the Project Sleep post, and we definitely link to her there. Okay, well, my dear, thank you so much, Amanda. You've done an incredible job raising awareness through the Rising Voices and through your World Narcolepsy Day article. And it's so cool to see where you are right now and see where you're going to go. I love that part you said, the picture with the dog saying, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I think like all things are a lot of people feeling that way and just doing it anyway. And we're just so proud to cheer you on. And so thank you to Amanda. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, our Project Sleep community and Amanda's friends and family. And we will take a few weeks off now because there is the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day, our two Sundays in a row coming up. So we are going to take a few weekends off, but we'll be back for this series towards the end of February. We're not going to compete with the Super Bowl this year. We did it last year. Bob was on about the same time as J-Lo and Shakira.
Oh no.
So we decided not to compete with that this year. So stay safe, everybody, and stay well. And thank you again to Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie.
Of course. Good night.